that the only thing which differentiates people is not their IQ. That's really not the case. It's all about the opportunities that you have, the social background, the people you interact with. So these are people who may want to aspire to higher things in life, but they've not been able to. They've just not been able to get there because of limited opportunities. But they want to.
Hi, welcome to another episode of the OriginBlue Podcast. Today, I am extremely excited to bring to you Mr. Srinivasan. Mr. Srinivasan is a managing director of Lincoln Electric. And this is after an extremely long career, starting from managing as a management trainee in ITC all the way to this particular designation. Mr. Srinivasan, welcome to the OriginBlue Podcast.
Thank you, Mr. Slaria, and I'm very, very happy to be here. Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Pleasure to have you. I am very curious, Mr. Srinivasan. The journey from a management trainee all the way to head of an organization, managing director of an organization, is a very long one. Help us know your journey. What was it like to traverse these years of professional growth?
Okay, so I started as a management trainee in ITC after finishing my BTech from IIT Madras. This was in 1978. Now, I started as a very, very hardcore manufacturing guy in the area of maintenance. And that was pretty much all the time on the shop floor, repairing machines and stuff like that. So it was very, very basic, hard manufacturing stuff. So after this, I did my MBA from IIM Calcutta. And thereafter, I was working for a consultancy firm, which was Ernst & Young, and it was called SP Bilimoria in those days. And there too, I was, my first assignment was in the area of operations. I was assigned to a firm which had to improve its operations, basically to increase output, increase efficiencies, and so on and so forth, basically to get more product out into the field. And this lasted for some period of time, not very long, maybe about a year and a half. And then I moved into a manufacturing organization. And I've been a manufacturing guy all my life. Maybe it was, sort of, maybe partly by choice, partly because of the way my career moved. But one of the things I found was that my career was, most people find that their careers move very fast in marketing. But I found that my career was moving pretty well in manufacturing also, partly because, in a sense, there is less, I'd say competition in manufacturing. If you have an IIT and IIM background, it's the amount of competition in the manufacturing field is much less because a lot of people from IIT and IIM migrate into areas like banking and finance and stuff like that. So relatively speaking, my getting into manufacturing and becoming the head of a manufacturing organization was relatively easier. I mean, this is something which could be a useful insight in the sense that most people with these kind of backgrounds tend to go into areas like finance and marketing. But this was a journey for me which was relatively nice, and it was good because I was using all my engineering knowledge in the sense that when you're part of an organization which is deeply into the technical side, and you have a background which is which is from IIT, you tend to get, maybe it should not be, but you tend to get taken a little more seriously than others. Okay, this guy's from IIT. It really doesn't mean anything much, but it just happens that way. So my first assignment as head of a company was Rane Brake Linings. This was in 1999, and from there onwards, I've been head of manufacturing organizations, basically only manufacturing organizations. In between, while I was head of manufacturing organization for a US company, ESAP, at that time it was an English company. it was really I'd say I was the head of the company, the head of the Indian company, and the organization wanted to use my services as part of the global organization. So I was, for a brief while, not a company head. I was head of global operations, reporting to the company head. And this was looking after the factories in Europe, improving the factory operations. They're basically implementing lean manufacturing. And after that, I've been basically with Lincoln Electric now from 2011 till now. So that's all my life has been in manufacturing and heading manufacturing companies. So that's a snapshot of how my career has moved.
That's a very interesting journey. So you basically started off with consulting and then moved all the way into manufacturing and then built your entire career span over there.
Right.
And I love the tip, which is, hey, you know what? Operations and manufacturing actually might have lesser competition as compared to a lot of other elements. So if you want to rise up faster and better, it's a good place to be operating in.
Yeah, right. I do guest lectures at IIM Cal. So in one of my guest lectures, which was to the PGP students, and one of them, got up and asked me, you're from manufacturing. You're from a manufacturing background. We don't see any. In the last placement and the placement before that, there was not even a single job which went, into a manufacturing background. So how come you got in there? And when I explained this, oh, it was an eye opener. Oh, really? Is that the case? Yeah, it's a dog eat dog world in other areas like marketing and finance and mergers and acquisitions and stuff like that. But relatively, the competition free world in manufacturing. It was quite an insight for them.
I would completely agree with you. I remember during my B school days, we had Mr. Anand Mahindra come in for one of the guest lectures, similar guest lectures. And this is long back, right? This is like, 2003 or so. Yeah. And he mentioned something like this as well. He says, manufacturing is going to become so great that people would love to build a career over there. And anybody who chooses to do that will perhaps have a better, more firm career and more rewarding career as compared to a lot of them.
So, yeah, absolutely. I fully agree with that. Absolutely. See, again, I'll tell you, the reason is this, for reasons right or wrong, if your background gets you taken more seriously, it gets you, so whatever you say, and there's so many simple things that, you talk about, you talk about, let's say, for example, something, we have a wire drawing factory. And, you talk about how the theory of elasticity is important over here, ultimate tensile strength and, stuff like that, which is very basic engineering stuff. And, it's sort of eye-popping for a lot of the people around that, yes, you remember your engineering background and then you're talking about it. So it gets you a lot of respect and, gets you taken quite seriously as compared to, again, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying there's anything wrong with marketing people, but you talk about brand equity and stuff like that. Yeah, well, I'm sure there's a lot of interesting theory behind it, and don't get me wrong. I'm not sort of pulling down marketing people, but basically in manufacturing, there's a huge amount of underlying engineering theory which goes into manufacturing, and that's and you're getting with the benefit of your education. All of that is going into into your work, which is something which is pretty rewarding.
I'd completely agree with you, and thank you so much for sharing this one. I'm curious about something, and I've always been curious about this. Right, from 1978 till 24, you've been working, you've been doing things. Did it at any time get like tiring for you, or like, oh my God, what am I doing? Why am I doing this? Or just kab tak karte rahenge? Till when will I do this? Did you reach any stage like that?
No, really no, because for me, as I said, again, I go back to what I said earlier. You see, in all meetings, discussions, problem solving, everything is about the moment. You live the moment, which is, you're interacting with people, you're solving problems. So every day is a new day. I mean, it's if everything was routine, you went into a meeting and then you said yes, okay, what is the achievement yesterday? What was done? Okay, fine. Please improve tomorrow, and there's really no value addition. Then yes, but if you were to look at it and say, okay, what are the problems? Even as a factory manager, what are the problems we encountered yesterday? Okay, these are the problems. How do we fix them? So how do we find a permanent fix for it? How do we do horizontal deployment? How do we horizontally deploy whatever solution we come up with? So everything is about problems and solutions where you're using your brain all the time. And to me, so long as you're using your brain all the time, uh, I would look at you're really not getting fatigued. See, I look at fatigue from three angles. One is, or three, I'd say three ways of getting fatigued. One is physical fatigue, the second is mental fatigue, and the third is emotional fatigue. Now, if you look at physical fatigue, we are really not getting fatigue. That's something which I go to the gym every day to get fatigue. So that's mental fatigue. I don't really think so. If you are into problems all the time and you're trying to solve problems, you feel good about it. Whereas emotional fatigue, that comes from stressful situations and trying to overcome situations where you really are dealing with some people related issues and there really no solution. And though that I can understand is real stress, emotional stress. But mentally, I don't think, if you are deep into problem solving and you are adding value, I really do not believe that you'll feel fatigued or ever feel tired of the work that you're doing. That would be that's my view. I mean, if somebody is really feeling fatigued about, if he comes to office and says, "Oh, the kind of problems I have, I'm really not interested in solving them," I would think that he's in the wrong job.
That's a very fair thought. I love this one. You've talked about mental fatigue, you've talked about physical fatigue, and then you've talked about emotional fatigue. And physical fatigue, in at least the white collar jobs, is both not in the office, but seek it elsewhere, right? Do whatever other activities you're doing. Now, mental fatigue, you've got to search for the right problems and work towards solving them. If you're not getting the right problems, or if those problems don't connect with you, then you perhaps are not in the right job, and then look for an alternative. But you should be
Right.
mentally challenged in your work, and that will just keep a person going, right? And the
Right.
last element that you mentioned was around the emotional fatigue. Tell
Yeah.
me a little bit more about that one, Mr. Srinivasan. I'm curious to learn about emotional fatigue journey of yours, or what
Okay,
you have
that's
observed in
something
others.
which, to be honest, I tend to avoid it. I mean, if you want to know about emotional fatigue situations, that would be like, you failed a customer, right? So you made a customer a promise, right, which you thought you could achieve, but you failed in that. Now you have to go and meet that customer, and it's a difficult couple of hours where you have a discussion and you really you don't have a leg to stand on because you failed, and you got to come up, and the customer says, no, I don't want excuses, and you really don't have a good answer. So that would be for me a typical emotional fatigue situation. You come out of the meeting saying, oh boy, that was over, I'm glad that that was over, kind of thing, and I really don't want to go through that again. That is not an exciting part of a job, right? It's for part of a job which you've got to manage, but it's not the most exciting part of the job. You tend to, you know, uh, try to. You should not shy away from it, but sometimes you got to stand up front and you take the flak on behalf of the organization. And, that's something which you have to do. I mean, typically, let me give you an example. Like, you promised a customer something, but that something is requires some imported parts from overseas. Now, because of the supply chain disruptions, you've got a lot of other problems, but you made a commitment, and then the customer is screaming because of this. Then you go down to his factory, you meet him, then the top management comes in, and it's you've got to be able to handle the situation, explain, and all the time, the answer is, you're making excuses and stuff like that. So it's very difficult. It's, sort of, you realize that you failed, but you got to handle the situation and make sure at least the customer is with you for the future. So that's what I mean. I'm sure people have come across these kind of stressful situations. So, the less I dwell on it, I'd like to talk about, to me, mental fatigue is not really fatigue. A problem sort of, after solving a problem, you feel energized. Okay, bring me more, bring on more of this. Whereas emotional fatigue, if you finish one customer like this and then they say, okay, now we've got to go to the next customer and tell them the same thing. It's, oh, let me go back to the hotel and, relax for some time. That would be the situation.
I would agree with you. I hear you very well on this one. I have a question, and I'm very curious about this one question. Okay. The shift from a functional head to an organization head is a significant orbit change, right? So one can be, for example, vice president, let's say manufacturing. One can be vice president HR or sales. But that shift from being one function focused person to an organization focused person is not something that I've seen a lot of my audience make very easy. Your thoughts around this?
In my case, I'm not. I am not a single function person. You have to look at it this way. I've been in maintenance. I've been in purchase. I've been in quality. I've been in operations, factory management, and for a while as well, I was a brief while in marketing as well. In industrial setting. So therefore, I was. I'm a bit of a jack of all trades before coming into. Actually, when you from a single function person to a head of an organization, I think maybe slightly easier, because when I got into the as head of the company role, I felt the urge to to stick my oar in everywhere, like maintenance. Tell the maintenance guys that when I was in my days when I was in maintenance, this is the way we used to do things. I realized that that may not be the best way to solve things. To give people solutions to their problems may not be the best way to do it. Or I was head of planning in a production planning in a factory. So to go down to the planner and say, hey, you must do this through a planning of equalizing run out time. So therefore, this is the way you make the matrix, put down all the products. So you feel tempted to do that, but then you realize that that's micromanagement, and you really don't want to get into that level. It's better that you just ask questions. How are you doing it? Okay, are you satisfied with the way that you're doing it? Because so then you would be exposed on this flank. You would have this problem. Just make sure that you get all that right. And better to ask questions and let people try to resolve it on their own. Because once you give them a solution, MD has said this, we have to do it this way. So even if there's something wrong with this, right, with what I've proposed, people say, oh, boss has said so, we've got to do it this way. So that kind of, we don't want that situation. I want people to be thinking and to arrive at the solutions themselves. So that's, I would say that transition, to me, a guy who's been in a single function with some exposure to another function would not get into this trap of micromanagement. Whereas a guy like me who's been in all functions would find it easier to understand everything, but then would try to get himself involved in everything as well. That's a danger.
You hit upon a lot of very, very good points, Mr. Srinivasan. I'm very curious to scratch the surface. The first one was avoiding micromanagement. And you realize that the more you tell people, then they just start doing what you've told them exactly versus applying themselves, right? So you taught us about that. You also talked a lot about questioning people so that they can apply their brains. They don't get that mental fatigue setting into their own selves. How has your leadership style evolved over years? When you started your career very young till now, how has your leadership style evolved?
I would say a lot of it earlier was, do this, do this, do this, do this. That was how it used to be earlier. And when people didn't do exactly what I told them to do, then it was, get annoyed with them, get angry with them, and stuff, so on and stuff. That was a pretty, I'd say, a very kind of platoon commander kind of, or the leadership style. But over a period of time, it's evolved into a more kind of delegated, more kind of questioning kind of style, where it's better, where I realize that it's the important thing is the person who asks questions. What's you got to be able to ask the right questions rather than providing the right answers. There are many times people come to you with seeking answers, and you're tempted to give an answer, but it's better to sort of ask a question and move a person along towards the right answer, unless it's something which is very obvious that if he's blindsided and he's missing something which is very obvious. Maybe you might want to just tell him, but otherwise, I would try to move people along those lines. That would be the style which has changed over a period of time. And delegation. I, I don't know if I should. So can I take a bit of time to brag a little, if you don't mind? Everyone, almost every single person who reported to me, I would say 80%. When I was as company head, I don't know, maybe 70-80% of people who have reported to me are today either company heads or functional heads of big organizations. So almost everybody who has worked for me has become as has come to a role as big as, if not bigger than mine. So I keep count of how many people have developed into CEOs, and that's been pretty good. Either CEOs or functional heads of Asia Pacific and things like that. That's so. I think just about everyone who's worked for me has come into this kind of position. So that's something I'm very happy about. I keep count of how many such people are there, and if anybody has not made it, I would look at it and wonder why. And almost everyone who worked for me, I think, has worked for a pretty long period of time. My attrition rate is pretty close to zip. That's attrition rate of people directly reporting to me. So I would take it that that's a sort of endorsement of my leadership style, in the sense that I don't push too much. I give people space to do things and still question them. Ask the right questions and move them along in a manner that they are in a position to even replace me at any point.
This is very golden. So what I'm hearing from you is initially you were very direction focused. Do this, do this, do this. And if something doesn't happen exactly that way, then you'd get a little angry. Over the years, you've evolved a lot more into asking the right questions. And that's a tip that you're also sharing with everybody. Asking good questions makes people's brains work, makes them start applying themselves, applying their thinking. So that's one. The second thing that you also mentioned is giving people space. So versus breathing down the neck every time, the moment you give people space, they are able to think it through and apply themselves a lot more further, asking questions then again, so that the ownership and the direction remain similar. And in the process, of course, delegating effectively.
Yeah, absolutely. Because, see, to me, what is the difference between work and play? What's the how does one say there's a difference between work and play? In play as well, you're trying to solve problems, right? You're actually trying to use your brains. And I'm talking about mental games. You're trying to use your brains to try and solve problems, right? So what's the difference? The difference is that in a game you have you have a little more, you have more space. There's no real accountability as such, and the time frame as such is not that critical. Of course, in a game, sometimes you're under pressure. You've got to complete the game, otherwise it's game over and stuff like that. But you're not under that kind of pressure for accountability for time and results. Now, how do you have the accountability for results, but yet make it seem like play for the other person, so the other person enjoys what he's doing, but at the same time he has the accountability for results, is by providing a slightly longer time frame. To me, the joy in a job is the extent of the time frame that you have to achieve a particular result. If you have a decently good time frame and you are able to achieve a particular result, that increases the enjoyment of your job, as compared to one where you have to report to your boss every couple of hours. So I have a tip. This is a tip also I gave the PGP students, which is that your enjoyment of a job is directly proportional to the square of the distance from your boss. To the square distance from your boss.
Your enjoyment is directly proportional to the square of the distance from the boss. Okay, so the more the distance, the happier you are.
Correct. In other words, the less breathing down the neck, the happier you are, and probably the more effective you will be. So I've given them examples of jobs, like for example, a regional sales head. A regional sales head is an independent guy sitting far away. He's got a lot of powers of his own, and he's not accountable for every day's work. So therefore, it's something which is that way. It's an independent job. A plant head, an independent plant which is far away. Now there are two types of plant heads. Just keep this in mind. This is very interesting. One is a plant head where the head office is also located in the same place. Right? So you have the head office on the premises and you have the factory also on the premises. And then you have another factory which is located perhaps in a different city. Now the factory head who's along with the head office is a relatively less enjoyable and a smaller role as well, because already has the managing director breathing down his neck. Whereas the guy who's sitting far away in a distant city has a lot more space to work with. Two different roles altogether. That's my opinion.
A very interesting observation, by the way. And thank you so much for sharing this. Mr. Srinivasan, I'm going to shift gears now with you. Okay. And I'm going to bring you on to a topic that I know you are very passionate about, which is around upward social mobility, especially for our workers. Tell us more about this concept. Tell us more about your thoughts around this.
Okay, thank you. That's leading me straight into my favorite subject. But to start with, I'd like to explain the background. One of the incidents which happened very early in my career was one which left a lasting impression on my mind. It was, what happened was that in this factory there was an inter-union rivalry, and the management staff were caught in between. We were actually in the factory on one day when we found that the opposite union, which was smaller in numbers, had gotten a large gang of thugs outside, and they had blocked the gate. None of us could go outside, and it was very clear that they were armed with sticks and stuff like that. I don't think any of them had machetes or anything like that, but I think they were well armed with sticks and rods and stuff like that. And it was clear they were going to come in and there was going to be a clash between them and the workers' union inside. So all of us hid inside the management staff hid under the tables inside the office. As expected, there was a clash, and then fortunately the workers' union won, and these guys were chased outside. They were chased away, and none of them were able to enter the management offices. But that left a very lasting impression on my mind. And I was into looking at unions and unionism and so on and so forth to try to understand it better. And there were things like the incident which happened at Maruti, where the HR head was beaten, and then subsequently he was left to die in a burning area. And there was another one in another company in South India. I don't want to mention the name, but there also the HR head was killed, was murdered, and I was just wondering what leads to all of this. And then there was a startling insight I had. There was a gentleman this gentleman was I think he was a PhD in sociology, and HR background, PhD in sociology, and he has done a lot of work living with. He has actually lived in the houses of people from workers' backgrounds. He has lived along with the workmen. He has lived along with casual laborers. He has lived along with others, and so on. And he made this presentation about something which should have been very obvious to everyone, which is that uh, the workmen have as much ambition as any of us do to get to a very high position in life. It's not that they see themselves as okay. We are under the impression that they are accept their lot in life, that they are from a particular level and they would accept their lot in life, and this is where they would come to. No, he says that a lot of them, a large number of them, are actually people who are very intelligent, and they could be like in positions where you or I are, but they haven't been able to be only because of their because they've not had the privilege of uh, uh, education and opportunities. In fact, I don't know if you read this book by Malcolm Gladwell, in which he mentions pretty much the same thing, and he's written about people who that the only thing that differentiates people is not their IQ. He's done a study of there was a study he mentions about people with higher IQ, and he says that's really not the case. It's all about the opportunities that you have, and the social background, the people you interact with. So these are people who may want to aspire to higher things in life, but they've not been able to. They've just not been able to get there because of limited opportunities. But they want to. So my study went into how we can actually bring people up into how we can create up a higher social mobility. Now the theory, as the gentleman says, is like this. When a worker joins a company, it's okay. His salary is reasonably good. He's reasonably happy with his salary compared to what you would get as a casual laborer or something else. He's pretty happy. Now, as he progresses in the company, he keeps getting increments or whatever is negotiated by the union, and his salary keeps going up. The problem comes that you know his salary keeps going up, but the work that he does is pretty much the same. It's not vastly different. Yeah, he brings to bear a little more skills, but it's pretty much the same. So for the company, if his cost to the company is here, his value to the company is much lower. But at the same time, this guy, if his cost to the company is here, his expectation is here. Because as he gets older, let's say after 20, 25 years, he wants a flat of his own, a house of his own. He wants his at least a good two-wheeler. Maybe he doesn't aspire to a car, a good two-wheeler, a good education for his son, a good wedding for his daughter. These are all things which he feels are necessary because of the social circles that he's in, sort of uh, other people whom he's interacting with. So his expectations of salary are higher. And that really is what leads to this sort of, differentiation. This leads to this stress, which is I think I need more money, and the company feels that actually you deserve less money because I can get someone else to do your job for a much lower salary. This is where the problem comes in. So the solution that I saw was that hire people. You hire people who have some basic technical knowledge like ITI or who have done a basic diploma course. You take them into and you hire people who are people from villages or people from poorer backgrounds. Take them in as factory workers and keep them in your workforce for 3, 4 years, 5 years. Train them meanwhile in skills which are marketable. Now there are skills which are marketable, skills which are not marketable. Now if you take a production operator, not a very marketable skill. Now, the guy who operates a machine. Now, if it's a skilled job, CNC operator, yes, that's there. So, do you have such jobs which you can upgrade them to? So, look within your organization for jobs which have marketability. Now, for example, in our company, we have welding, which is a marketable job. Skilled welders, they can command their own price. If you're a really good skilled welder doing a number of other things. So we get people into this. So we train people in welding and bring them into areas where they can use these skills either in test welding or as demo welders or even going into sales and helping our customers weld and so on. A lot of our sales force is built up from people who are originally workmen on the shop floor. In fact, almost all of our Salesforce is built from there. A lot of the other people also are quality control staff. People like that are built from there. Are people who have come from the from a work from the operating from the factory floor background. So this then results in this upward social mobility. Now, for these people, once they are into this, their value to the company starts going up exponentially, and they are actually their value to the company is higher than their cost to the company. So, at any point in time, the company has to think twice, saying, "Hey, I better treat this guy well because I'm paying him less than what his market value is." And so long as that is that we are always the company is always respectful and good to the person rather than somebody whose market value is much lower than what his cost is. So this way is as we keep increasing his market value. So the aim from my perspective is that we should not provide employment, we should provide employability. That is the mantra, that employability rather than employment, and that results in that upward social mobility. Now, you can't do this for everyone. We ourselves have seen that there are certain people who have gone, we've taken them into this role, and they themselves have said, after 2 years, I've had enough. This is not for me. I'll go back to being an operator. I'm happy with being an operator. Then we explain to them, look, upward mobility, you can, thank you, but this, I'm not really, this is not really my cup of tea. I'm happy with doing my operations. And I can earn more incentive because of I have a higher level of productivity and there's production incentives. I'll earn more incentives than others and I'll make extra money that way. So I'm reasonably happy. So please leave me alone. I'm happy to go back to where I am. But those who have aspirations, so the guy at least knows that he was given an opportunity for upward social mobility. He didn't take it. That's different. But other people he's seeing are actually moving upward. I don't know really, when you look at the guy psychologically, what kind of problem that creates when he sees his juniors moving up and earning a lot more money. But well, that's he's had his opportunity. He's not taken it. So that is so. In our organization, a large number of people have come from this area. In fact, I'd say in almost all functions, I have people from maintenance. I have people in quality. People from IT, people in IT, in our people from maintenance background, we have taken them and, for things like our hardware management of IT that they are working in that. I heard people from, there are people in HR who were originally shop floor workmen. So that is the way in which we create upward social mobility. To be honest, that, there's a huge investment involved in training, but we think that the payback is enormous in terms of, reducing the attrition rates, keeping the attrition rates lower. And we have a constant pipeline so that even if from a company's, if you look at the business case for this, there's an extremely strong business case because as you look at, if attrition happens, guys look at it and say, there's better opportunities outside. And they do because I know this is my market value. I know this is my cost to the company. I know I can get a better salary outside, but okay, I'm with the company. Now it's time for me to move on. But at that time, we have somebody else in the pipeline who can come and take his place. So for the company, there's very little disruption. So there's a extremely good business case for this kind of model of keeping people moving through and creating that upward social mobility. So I would strongly recommend, that other companies also try to follow this model because we are talking in India about creating a middle class of increasing the size of that middle class. And over a period of time, you will find that in any economy, as an economy becomes more and more developed, the percentage of manufacturing keeps reducing. The percentage of manufacturing to total GDP keeps reducing. India is already at, I don't remember, probably 50+% or something, 55% or something like that. But if you look at the developed economies, it's sort of like 75%. I don't know about Germany and Japan, which are largely manufacturing-driven economies. But look at most other developed economies, 75% will be service. So you have a lot of the people migrating from, from this kind of thing. Their children then migrate into much better paying jobs into the middle class. That I think would be how the organization philosophy would be in sync with the nation's philosophy. That I think that would be a very good way in which the two sort of merge together. Well, in this regard, I read somewhere that China is having a big problem in this regard because they have a large number of people who are, who can be, they have a large number of people who can go into these kind of well-paying jobs, but most of the jobs they have are in relatively less paying manufacturing jobs. So they have a lot of manufacturing jobs where they can't fill people, and they have a lot of people for whom they can't find high-paying jobs, high-paying, jobs for educated people. So it's I remember Xi Jinping once made this statement. I remember this thing. You should learn to eat bitterness or something like that. I saw that somewhere. That these educated people should learn some bitterness, eat bitterness, and then should put this. They should learn to eat bitterness, and only then they will get into they will understand what life is about. He says that's very important for them. So it's this I think is the way how our nation should move, and how I think our company leaders should take this upon themselves to be able to create this kind of model. It's much easier to go with hiring from outside and stuff like that, but I would suggest that this would be the way. And there's a very strong. It requires a cultural change, but I think there's a very strong business case for this.
So what I'm hearing from you is employability over employment, right?
Correct.
And invest in people in a way that their core skill or the marketability of their skill keeps on going up as they progress with the organization, so that a person at a higher salary continues to be at a higher value to you as well. And even if you're looking for somebody outside the same place, you at least have a person in-house who has that same skill and the same level, and that just increases the organization's competitiveness. It increases organization stability and succession, so to speak, of versus trying to get people from outside where there might be its own associated challenges.
Absolutely spot on. Yeah, that's exactly what I'm trying to say. Develop people from within, but I mean, to some extent, it should not be a kind of incestuous organization, if I may use that word. So you do need to bring in a little bit of blood from outside occasionally to sort of bring in outside thoughts as well, so that your organization does not become totally sort of inward focused and having its own ideas. Do bring in thoughts from outside. Do allow those thoughts to sort of find space within the organization. That's also part of it. But by and large, the bulk of your organization should be grown from within. That's my view.
And the focus that you're bringing over here are the blue-collared workers. It's the actual workers who are working the plants, the shifts, and so on and so forth, right? I've seen a lot of this happen for the management teams, but I've seen very little focus of the skill development, at least on our blue-collared workers. In fact, negligible. For example, we'll do a lot of management development programs, leadership development programs, coaching, but all of that is for the white-collared staff in an organization. Whenever we talk about the blue-collared workers, there's always, I don't know, we haven't thought it, I don't know if there's any value, and so on and so forth. A lot of them are on somebody else's payrolls as well, not directly on the company's payrolls. So how would you balance this particular element out, Srinivasan? How do you get companies to invest on the blue-collared workers per se?
Okay, my business case is fairly straightforward. If you don't invest in the blue-collar workers, you are going to have a problem with them at some point in time. How do companies deal with this? I'll tell you how the general models work from what I've seen. First is these guys work in this company for some amount of time, 20, 25 years. Then you give them voluntary retirement, right? You give them voluntary retirement and then bring in a whole new bunch. So there's a huge cost that you will be investing in putting into voluntary retirement and then bringing in a whole bunch of new workers. By which time the cost of your factory is high cost of your factory is already being established. Alternatively, you have what happens is that your factory, usually when your factory is in a particular location, and then you find that the land value of your factory is extremely high. So what you do is you shut down the plant, pay off all the workmen, and then shift the factory to some other location where the land value is low, and either sell off this land or give it for to a property developer for development or whatever. That would be the kind of model that people follow, because they don't think too much into the future of what's going to happen to these workmen. Okay, any of these guys, for example, on all these management development programs, if you ask any of these people, where do you see your workmen after 25 years? The answer would probably be, shrug of the shoulders and I don't know. that would be
Correct.
the right. So that would be
Correct.
the answer. But if and this then is what leads to these strikes and industrial unrest and so on and so forth. Whereas we invest in the blue collar workers right at the beginning, don't have a glass ceiling there. Make it clear. See, what is generally understood is that a blue collar guy can become foreman, team leader, something like that, but not beyond that. That's about
Correct.
the limit to what you go to. That's the understanding. There's a glass ceiling over there. Now remove that glass ceiling and create a progression, create a path of progression. So we are now trying, we've got workmen into the junior management levels, and then to move them into the middle management levels also is possible. Whereas some of our people who have gone outside the company, quite smart people, they have already moved into some kind of middle management roles. Like, some guys, he's a engineering manager somewhere in Saudi Arabia. Another guy is, he's a regional sales head for Tamil Nadu. So these are the kinds of things which which happen. People then have this. People move upward. So that I think is very important. If you leave this out, you're missing a huge opportunity to. Um, you're missing a huge opportunity to develop your workforce. That's what I think.
So, what I'm hearing from you is invest in the right way so that people in your blue collars build a long term trajectory and growth plan. As you do that, and it's not just still a foreman or say a team leader, but even up and beyond, have a vision for them. Where will this person be the next 25 years? What kind of a career progression can he have in our or she have in our organization as it continues to move forward? And what we will discover is that with experience and with time, these people not only will pay you back multifolds, they'll be more loyal, they'll build the right kind of organization and be with you for those very difficult jobs as well, which perhaps a
Absolutely.
younger, very fresh MBA grad might just feel not right or leave very quickly from.
Yeah, absolutely. There's one caveat here. I usually do not put these people into factory management roles. Now that may sound a bit, strange, but I have them in roles which are slightly outside the factory, either in sales or in, sales support or sales demonstrations or in quality or in purchasing or stuff like that. The reason is in factory management. If I, for example, if one day one of these guys becomes a production manager, right, it becomes a little difficult for him because his former colleagues are on the factory floor, and they would say, "Hey, we used to have drinks together, and talk about the management and stuff like that. Now you're pulling this on us." So there's, to some extent, there could be an issue with those kind of roles. But if the man is strong enough, he would be able to overcome that and go on with. But it would just be that. Now, I found this because when I was in IDC as a management trainee, knowing nothing, uh, I found that workmen were listening to me. I'm a nobody, just a kid. But they would listen to me more than they would listen to one of their people who has risen from the ranks, because that guy is one of us. So how does he order us around? Okay, you're one of them, you're so you can, so even if you give us orders, okay, we listen. So that's the kind of thing. So uh, there are some of these psychological insights which I've got over a period of time, and yeah, so that's. But yes, this I think is the direction that companies should be going.
I think it's a very fair thought, Mr. Srinivasan. And I know we are running out of time, but I'd like to block some separate time with you to just double click on this one topic alone. I think it's a very critical topic. I think it's a topic that warrants a lot more focus by the organizations. And it's also a topic that needs to be solved and talked about at length for building the kind of country that we want to build, for building the kind of workforce that we want to build. Thank you so much for spending your time and energies on this. Could I now shift you to the last component of our podcast?
Sure.
And the last component essentially focuses on people insights, right? As a head of an organization, as a functional head of your function as well, what are some uniquenesses of people that you have observed? What are some challenges around people that you have observed?
I would say the biggest challenge is bringing them into line with this particular thinking of upward social mobility. And I'll tell you why. Because if I look at it, let me look at it from the perspective of the factory manager, right? So he's got a number of workmen whom he has trained. The workmen are trained, they are performing well, right? Now I tell him that 2 days in a month you have to spare these people for training. So they will be coming out for training. Then he asks, is this training which will improve their skills? Well, no, actually it is for something which is completely unrelated to the factory. It's on things like welding and other areas which have nothing to do with the factory. Then what's in it for me? What's in it as a factory manager? What do I gain by giving them for training? Right?
Correct.
Then comes the more difficult part that finally, okay, so and so have now applied for this position, right? This position we open it up and ask people to apply. Have applied for this position and they've been selected, and now we'll be moving them. No, I can't afford to give this guy at this point in time because he's the only guy who comes. If he's not there, then I would not be able to run this machine and stuff like that. So this is where the challenges come in the sense that people are very reluctant to give up they are focused on their targets for today, as they should be. So how do I achieve my targets for today? You are interested in developing this guy for 3 years down the road, where he will become a sales guy and become an important component of our sales team. I'm worried about how much output I deliver today and how I meet my daily production targets and my monthly production targets. How do I reconcile these two? So this is the biggest challenge of getting people to accept that there is a cultural change and the people with you are not people whom you own. They are only passengers going through your department. They are not there permanently. Accept that. It's your job to train them and to once they are out, you'll have to bring in others, train others, and this will be a constant churn. It's going to be a part of your job. It's not going to be something which is a one time and then you forget about it. So to make this clear, this is there in everybody's performance appraisal. I think 15% of their total appraisal is based on people development, and people development with it's not a generic thing like people development. Yes, I've developed people. I've developed this guy. I've developed this guy. I sent this guy for a training program. No, it's about how many people have been moved to a different upwardly mobile function, and how many people have I taken in to replace them. That is a clear numbers target which is set for people. So that is one very, very important insight if you are looking to make a cultural change in the organization. This I found is the most important thing about people. Yeah.
That's a very important yardstick. And what I'm hearing from you is versus just having basic numbers of how many people I sent for trainings, etc. How many people from my team were upwardly mobile in the long term? And that's an important yardstick for a leader. Clearly, you have held yourself accountable to the very same task as well, as you mentioned a little while back, where a lot of people who were working with you are now as heads of organization, CEOs, and so on and so forth. Excellent. Mr. Srinivasan, it's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you so
Thank you
much
so
for
much.
this time. I loved hearing about this upward more social mobility concept. I loved hearing about your personal journey, your leadership principles, and the way your leadership style evolved over the year. I know I'd love to have another conversation which double clicks inside the upward social mobility as well at a future date.
Thank you so much, Mr. Slaria. It's been wonderful being on this podcast, and I loved your questioning style. You really were able to get my brain working, and come out with all the things that of the past that I was able to now recall and bring out. So thank you for a really wonderful session. And yes, I'll be very happy for the double click at any point in time to go further into the subject of upward social mobility.
Thank you so
So,
much.
thank you.
So, Mr. Srinivasan,